We all know there's nothing new about parents disapproving of a child's relationship. But while the situation normally results in maybe a tantrum, a few days of the silent treatment, 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson came up with a far more sinister plan to be with her boyfriend, who also claimed to be a reincarnated werewolf. Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. My name is Joe, I'm the host, and thank you for joining today. And if today is your first time listening to 10-Minute Murder, I'm glad you're here. Hope you enjoy it, and by the end of it, if you do like what you hear, and it's interesting to you and you'd like to listen further, please subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss any future episodes. Also, connect with 10-Minute Murder on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the places like that. You can find those links in the show notes of this episode. Or it's just as easy. You can go to the search bar inside any of those apps and type in 10-Minute Murder. It's going to pop right up and you can follow from there. And if you are a returning listener to the podcast, welcome back. Super glad that you're here. And make sure you share this podcast with any of your friends that you think may be into brief true crime stories like this one. Speaking of, let's get to it. On the Sunday afternoon of April 23, 2006, a 6-year-old boy living in Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada, knocked on the front door of the Richardson family. He had come to ask 8-year-old Tyler Richardson to come outside to play with him, but nobody answered the door. The little boy decided to do something that would likely scar him for the rest of his life. He peered through the basement window. There, in the middle of the floor, lay 2 bloodied bodies. As you can guess, the 6-year-old ran back home as fast as his legs could take him, and he told his mother exactly what he had just seen. The police arrived a short time later and discovered the bodies of 42-year-old Mark Richardson and his wife, 48-year-old Deborah Richardson. Both had been stabbed dozens of times. Defense wounds on the couple's hands showed that they had put up a fight for their lives, but they lost. The autopsy report later showed that Mark had 24 wounds all over his body, including his eye, neck, chest, and groin. One of Deborah's 12 stab wounds punctured the sac around her heart and sliced her aorta. No wonder the basement of their home literally looked like a slaughterhouse. As the officers searched the home further, they found 8-year-old Tyler lying on his side in the bed with a deep cut to his neck. And then the investigators came across something alarming: a family portrait. It was creepy enough seeing the 3 butchered family members smiling in the picture, but what really caught the investigators' attention was the young girl. There was a 4th Richardson, 12-year-old Jasmine. At first, as Jasmine was nowhere in the house, the authorities panicked, thinking the killer had taken the girl. An Amber Alert was issued, nobody yet knowing that Jasmine was with the man who killed her entire family, but of her own free will. Because who would think a 12-year-old girl would have something to do with the triple murder of her own family? Well, that opinion changed quickly when the investigators checked Jasmine's school locker. The police had hoped to find something that would help them find Jasmine. Instead, they discovered a hand-drawn cartoon strip showing 2 stick figures burning Jasmine's family alive. She was definitely not seen as a victim anymore. It would turn out that the 2 stick figures were Jasmine and her boyfriend, 23-year-old Jeremy Steinke. Before Jasmine met Jeremy in a local mall in 2005, she was described as a happy, kind, and gentle girl with a large circle of friends. In turn, Jeremy was a depressed and unemployed high school dropout living in a trailer with his alcoholic mother. As soon as the two then started talking on social media sites like MySpace and Vampire Freaks, Jasmine began to change. Under the username Runaway Devil, the 12-year-old Jasmine described herself as, quote, awkward, nocturnal Wiccan, whose hero was serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. That alone is pretty alarming. But Jasmine's profile was really nothing compared to Jeremy's. Under the name Soul Eater, Jeremy claimed he was a 300-year-old reincarnated werewolf. Yes, I said werewolf. Reincarnated. Jeremy continued saying he loved the taste of blood, and his interests were pain and razor blades. If you put a person like this together with a 12-year-old girl, what else can happen than a disaster? Eventually, Jasmine's parents saw the messages Jeremy had sent to their daughter, including, quote, "You are a sight for sore eyes, and I miss you more than killing people. Can we get together and kill people together?" Needless to say, Mark and Deborah were terrified. They took Jasmine's computer and told her to never contact Jeremy again. They even asked the help of a counselor. But if anything, it made Jasmine want to be with Jeremy more than ever. And so, this 12-year-old girl began sneaking out to see her 23-year-old boyfriend. Jasmine did not wear her girly clothes anymore, but changed into a gothic style with heavy makeup and fishnets. Feeling like they were losing their daughter, Jasmine's parents did everything they could to keep her from seeing Jeremy. He didn't like that. He wrote on his blog, quote, "My lover's rents are totally unfair. They say that they really care. They don't know what is going on. They just assume. Their throats I want to slit. Finally, there shall be silence. Their blood shall be payment." Just a few days later, Jasmine sent her werewolf boyfriend a message saying, quote, "I have a plan. It begins with me killing them and ends with me living with you." On April 23, 2006, that plan was carried out. That day, Jeremy broke into Jasmine's home through the basement window wearing a black ski mask and carrying 2 kitchen knives. As soon as Deborah came downstairs to check where all the noise was coming from, Jeremy stabbed her. Hearing his wife's screams, Jasmine's father ran into the basement armed with the screwdriver. And as you already know, that tool did not save him. While Jeremy was finishing off her parents, Jasmine entered her little brother's bedroom and slit Tyler's throat before leaving him to bleed out. And what did Jeremy and Jasmine do then, after murdering 3 people? They went to a party and bragged about what they had just done. In the end, Jasmine and Jeremy were not criminal masterminds. The police were able to track them down following a trail of digital evidence and arrest them the very next day in Saskatchewan. At her 2007 trial, Jasmine pleaded not guilty, saying she had only talked about killing her family hypothetically. The jury, however, did not buy her BS and found her guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder on July 6, 2007. But here's the thing. Due to her young age, Jasmine could not be sentenced as an adult. The limit in Canada is 14 years, and she was 13 at the time, so the maximum penalty for Jasmine for wiping out her whole family was 10 years. In turn, Jeremy had been stupid enough to confess to the murders while in prison to an undercover police officer. He was tried in November 2008, found guilty, and sentenced to 3 life sentences on December 15th. Jeremy will be eligible for parole after serving 25 years, which should not be a long time at all considering he's a 300-year-old werewolf. Jasmine Richardson still is fortunately the youngest person ever convicted of multiple murders in Canada. She underwent extensive rehabilitation and treatment at a psychiatric hospital before completing her sentence in 2016 and being freed from the criminal justice system. Since then, Jasmine has changed her name and now lives under a new identity. As far as we know, Jasmine really changed for the better during her time behind bars. So much so that the Queen's Bench Justice Scott Broker said to her at the end of her sentence, quote, "I think your parents and brother would really be proud of you. Clearly, you cannot undo the past. You can only live each day with the knowledge you can control how you behave and what you do each day." Even some of her old neighbors agreed Jasmine, quote, "should be given a second chance. Living without her family, knowing she is the reason they are gone, is punishment enough." That's today's 10-minute murder. Brief and bingeable true crime. I think I set a 10-minute murder record today. I got through the story in just under 10 minutes, which normally the 10-minute part is kind of a lie. I try to make it in 10 minutes, but I usually don't. Today I did, but I will make no guarantees moving forward. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast today and you think you have a friend or family member that could enjoy it as well, send this to them. Let them know about 10-minute murder. Connect with 10-Minute Murder on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The links are in the show notes of this episode. And if you happen to be in the market for a new t-shirt or sticker or something like that, and you'd like for it to be a 10-Minute Murder sticker or t-shirt, also check the show notes. There's a link for the 10-Minute Murder merch store. Thanks for listening. Be safe and make good choices.